strange, mysterious stranger gives me a strange, mysterious phone, and a strange, mysterious, strange mystery begins. All that in the first 2 chapters of Enter the Parkerverse. Coming up right now.
Parallel Parker, Enter the Parkerverse, Chapter 1.
Parker!
Parker woke up hard and was surprised to see that it was daytime. She was upright, and 30 people were looking at her. For a few moments, none of this made sense to her, but somebody had just said her name. No, shouted it.
Parker!
But who and why? The 30 people were almost all kids about 12 years old, and they were sitting at desks, and the room looked a lot like her middle school classroom. So she was in school. That much was clear. She must have fallen asleep in class, but how long had she been asleep, and what class was it? History? Geography? Miss Fishpelter was looking at her from the front of the class, which meant that she was probably waiting for Parker to say something. Probably she had asked a question, and if Parker didn't want anyone to know she had been asleep, she had better answer it. But what answer? Her friend Wally, sitting at the desk next to hers, motioned with his head in a way that suggested she should answer right now. So she did.
Burma,
she said, as confidently as her still-sleeping mind could manage. It was the first thing she thought of, and it seemed like a good answer. She was pretty sure Burma was a country, so it had a chance of being the right answer if this was geography, history, or maybe even English lit, if they happened to be studying a book that took place in Burma. Miss Fishpelter scrunched up her face in a way that Parker often saw her do, usually right after Parker said things.
No, Parker,
the teacher finally said.
The answer to this fractions question is not Burma.
Okay, Parker thought. Fractions means it's math. Next time say a number. A number works for everything. She wished everybody would stop looking at her. Did she have something on her face? She poked at her cheeks. Yep, it was an eraser. It was so deeply stuck to her that she had to pry it until it finally popped off and bounced on the desk. It didn't stop everyone from looking at her, so she guessed that it had left a big eraser-shaped dent in her face.
Would you like to try again, Parker?
Miss Fishpelter asked. She wasn't going to let this go.
Not so much,
Parker said. Maybe the teacher could be reasoned with.
I think we both know that math is not my best subject.
Oh? And what is your best subject?
Parker had to think about that. And then she had to think about it some more. Visions of report cards spun through her mind, and all the marks on them looked kind of the same. None of them were terrible, but none of them were great. So what was her best subject? That question shouldn't be so hard to answer, she thought. She was about to make up an answer when, to her enormous relief, somebody rescued her. A girl at the back of the class raised her hand with such enthusiasm that she appeared to be trying to pick a huge apple from a high branch.
Miss Fishpelter, it's me, Octavia Talent from the back row.
Octavia was the girl who came to school every day dressed like it was class picture day. Except when it actually was class picture day, which is when she wore something formal. Last year, she had worn a top hat. Miss Fishpelter sighed like she'd had lots of practice sighing.
What is it, Octavia? You're interrupting Parker, not answering.
Don't you think you should remind everyone to sign up for the talent show?
Oh, right,
Miss Fishpelter said tiredly.
Everyone, don't forget that thing Octavia just said.
Octavia Talent from the back row.
Octavia added for everyone listening, just in case there were 6 other Octavias in the class seated across different rows.
Right,
Miss Fishpelter said.
If you haven't told me what your talent is yet, come by the gym at lunch and sign up. As you know, the talent show is tomorrow night. We're all very excited.
She sounded as if just speaking those sentences made her want to take a nap.
And remember, it's compulsory. That means you have to do it.
Parker was grateful that Octavia and the talent show announcement had taken attention away from her. She didn't like when the other kids looked at her as if they had never noticed her in class before. And they were only noticing her now because she had a weird dent from an eraser in her cheek. She wished that, just once, they would look at her the way they looked at Octavia, with a kind of amazement like she was a celebrity they all were hoping to get an autograph from. And as she thought about that, she had a sudden surge of hope, because she felt like she knew now how she was going to make things change. As Miss Fishpelter returned to her fractions, Parker leaned toward Wally and whispered,
I'm going to enter that talent show.
or at least she had planned to whisper it. But her excitement took over and she accidentally said it at full volume. And then everyone, including Miss Fishpelter, was looking at her again. Miss Fishpelter looked even more tired than before.
That's nice, Parker. Everybody's entering it. That's what compulsory means.
Parker shrank into her seat until the lesson started up again and everyone stopped looking at her. The mistake hadn't destroyed her excitement, though. She was going to enter the talent show, and it was going to be great. Weaving and dodging her way through the crowded lunchtime hallway, Parker was starting to think that Wally was less excited about the talent show idea than she was. Her biggest hint was the way that he looked like he was about to throw up every time she mentioned it.
So, how exciting is this talent show, huh?
She asked. She was pretty sure she knew the answer, but asked anyway. Wally looked like he was about to throw up. She had seen that coming.
Not very,
he said.
Most of my talents are the kind that I should really keep hidden.
That was true. Wally wasn't like most other kids. He wore a raincoat even on dry days, never combed his hair, and always looked as if he'd just climbed down out of a chimney he'd been stuck in for a week. Anytime she'd seen him have a hobby or take an interest, it usually involved something like worms, bugs, or fungus. Those were not the kinds of things you'd want to see up on a stage.
So what are you going to do?
She asked him.
Nose harmonica, I guess,
he said with a shrug.
Okay then.
It sounded gross, but Wally was actually pretty good at playing the harmonica with his nose.
Well, I'm excited,
Parker went on.
I've been invisible for too long in this school. It's time the world found out what Parker has to offer.
Wally rubbed the side of his head like he was trying to help a thought squeeze through it.
Like what?
He asked.
Well, for starters,
Parker said,
the world is going to see my amazing ability to sign up for things. Let's go.
She spotted an opening in the crowd and sped through it, straight into the gym. There was nobody else in line, so Parker marched right up to the sign-up table with all the confidence of someone who knew their life was about to finally get on track. Miss Fishpelter looked up from the book she'd almost fallen asleep reading. She looked surprised for a moment to see someone standing in front of her, and then looked exhausted to see that it was Parker.
Miss Fishpelter,
Parker said. She stood in the most confident pose she could put together. The kind of pose superheroes stood in when they were just about to conquer the bad guy.
Sign me up. One talent show, please.
Miss Fishpelter slid the sign-up sheet closer to herself and took the cap off her pen.
All right, Parker,
she said. She always had a way of saying Parker's name like it was a sigh.
What's your talent?
This is where Parker's plan mostly fell apart. Chapter 2.
My what?
Parker said. She was deflating slowly, because it had just occurred to her that entering a talent show required her to have a talent. It was a step in the whole talent show thing that she had completely overlooked.
Your talent,
Miss Fishpelter said.
This is a talent show.
Of course,
Parker said, trying to hide that this had all taken her very much by surprise.
I knew that.
She must have looked befuddled because Miss Fishpelter tried to help with suggestions.
Can you sing? Can you dance? Can you play a musical instrument?
The answer to all three was no, unless...
Does the doorbell count as a musical instrument?
Parker asked hopefully. It seemed pretty musical every time she pressed it, and it only had one button, so there wasn't anything extra to learn. If she could ring a doorbell on stage, it could be the highlight of the show. Miss Fishpelter made a noise like she had just found a dead fly in her sandwich after already finding 2 other dead flies in the same sandwich.
There must be something, Parker. Everybody's got something. Randall's talent is making armpit noises. At least I hope they come from his armpit.
Parker didn't even know how to do that, but she wasn't too bothered about that one. Miss Fishpelter closed her sign-up pad.
Maybe go and figure out what you can do, then come back here and say you'll do it. Okay?
Then she leaned to the side to see around Parker and yelled,
Next!
Parker didn't know why Miss Fishpelter had yelled next, because there was nobody else waiting, but she thought it probably meant it was time to walk away. So she did, her shoes squeaking on the gym floor in a way that almost sounded like they were laughing at her. Could it really be that she had no talents at all? Was it even possible for a person to not have talents? Didn't everybody have something they were great at? Shouldn't she know by now what hers was? All of these questions wrestled with each other in her mind like raccoons fighting over trash, and she couldn't make them stop. She was so distracted by them that she almost walked right into Octavia Talent doing dance warm-ups near the gym door. Octavia pretended to be surprised to see her.
Oh, hi, Parker. It's me, Octavia Talent from math class. Did you sign up for the talent show?
No.
Parker said. And then she realized that she didn't want to admit that she had no talents. That seemed like the kind of thing she'd want to keep to herself. She hurried to correct herself before Octavia could figure it out.
But only because I haven't decided which of my many amazing talents I'll be doing in the show.
Really? Why settle on just one? I signed up twice, for opera and for Irish dancing.
Octavia's eyes suddenly lit up like she had just realized something.
Oh, wait. I almost forgot I'm also very good at ballet.
She danced off toward the sign-up table, calling,
Miss Fishpelter, it's me, Octavia Talent from a few minutes ago.
Parker didn't wait to hear Miss Fishpelter's reply. Instead, she shuffled back into the hall where Wally was waiting for her and scratching bits of something out of his hair.
Don't worry about Octavia,
he said.
She thinks she's all that, but there are whole big chunks of that she isn't any of. Really, she's only most of that.
Parker didn't bother even trying to decode what Wally had said. But if he was trying to say that Octavia wasn't talented, then he needed his brain examined.
Talent is in her name, Wally. The talent show is literally her show.
Parker risked a look back into the gym and immediately regretted it because Octavia was demonstrating a spinning ballet dance so flawless that it made Parker feel even worse.
Let's just forget it, okay, Wally?
Parker started to trudge away. Wally stayed by the gym door, surprised.
But it's compulsory.
I know,
Parker said. She kept going, not knowing where she was headed, just knowing that she wanted to be far away from anywhere that talent mattered. But she thought that talent probably mattered just about everywhere. So where did that leave her? She weaved through the crowded hallway, only barely aware of all the other kids moving around her. She didn't notice the figure pushing toward her through the crowd, face hidden deep in the shadow of a hoodie. She didn't notice when the figure reached out a hand toward her. She didn't notice that there was a small, rectangular metal object in the hand. She didn't notice any of that until the figure forced the object into her hand. Whatever it was smooth and warm.
Take it!
The figure hissed close by Parker's ear.
They're coming!
That Parker noticed. Stunned, she looked at the thing in her hand. It was a phone, just a regular smartphone like some of her classmates already had, and the others were already asking their parents for. Why would someone give her a phone?
I can't take your phone,
she said to the hoodie person.
It's probably got your blork all over it.
Blork. Or worse, Parker thought. She tried to thrust it back into the stranger's hand, but the hooded stranger pushed it back.
Just take it.
Parker again shoved it back into the stranger's hand.
I don't take gifts from strangers.
The stranger spun wildly in all directions, scanning the hallway, then once more pushed the phone into Parker's hand.
I'm not a stranger,
the figure said, and then reached up and pulled the hood off. Parker gasped and staggered backward against the nearest locker. She was seeing something she couldn't possibly be seeing, which made it all the more shocking that she was seeing it. The stranger looked exactly like her. Parker stood frozen. She thought that maybe her jaw was hanging open in shock, but she couldn't tell for sure because she was numb and dazed, and not really thinking anything at all other than how. How could this person look so much like her? How could two Parkers exist? How could she get her hair to look as good as the other Parkers, with the bangs like that? The other Parker pulled her hood up, plunging her all too familiar face and perfect bangs back into shadow. She pointed at the phone in Parker's hand.
It's important that you have this. The fate of your universe and many others depends on it. Okay?
Parker squeaked. She wasn't even sure she was holding the phone anymore. She still couldn't move or breathe or feel anything, and she had mostly forgotten how to make words happen.
Protect it,
the other Parker said.
They'll be coming. They're probably already here.
And then she spun around and melted into the lunchtime crowd. Parker stayed locked in place, staring at the empty space where the other Parker had been only moments before. She stood that way for far too long until she started to get curious looks from kids passing by. And then Wally stepped up and filled the space she was staring at.
Parker,
he said. Parker halfway snapped out of it. She looked at the phone she was holding, turning it over in her hand.
What's that?
Wally asked. At first, she thought about giving him one of her standard sarcastic replies that she gave whenever somebody asked something incredibly obvious. Like, what does it look like? Or, what? You've never seen a phone before? But the more she looked at it, the more she wanted to ask the same question herself. It was a phone, wasn't it? It didn't look like any phone she'd ever seen. Could it be one of those experimental ones that the stores hadn't even started selling? Why would a stranger hand her one of those? Why would someone who looked exactly like her hand her anything at all, much less a phone that wasn't available in stores? None of this made sense, and Parker didn't like things that didn't make sense. Suddenly, all she wanted was to be rid of the thing and not have to think about it anymore. It was a complication, a problem, and she had plenty of those already, what with the whole no-talent thing.
I found it,
She finally said.
We should probably put it in the lost and found.
Yes, that was the best idea. That would make it someone else's problem. And it wasn't even really being dishonest, because for somebody to give you something meant that they had to lose it, and for you to take it meant that it had to be found. So, if you thought about it, the phone was honestly definitely for real lost and found, sort of. So Parker turned to lead Wally to the office, holding the phone out in front of her like it was a cartoon bomb with the fuse burning quickly down. They didn't get very far, because just down the crowded hall from Parker and Wally, halfway between the gym and the office, there was something.
Don't miss the next Parker-tastic chapter of Enter the Parkerverse. Like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Or if you don't want to wait, all 3 parallel Parker books are available right now on Amazon and Kobo. Look for the link in the show description